Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most shocking stories in the entire Bible, the book of Hosea. This isn't just some ancient text, it's a raw, emotional story of heartbreak, betrayal, and a kind of love that is so relentless it's almost hard to believe. So let me just start by asking you this. What if your personal life, your marriage, your deepest heartbreak, wasn't just yours? What if it was meant to be a public message from God? I know, it sounds crazy. But for one ancient prophet, this wasn't just some wild hypothetical. It was his commanded reality. All right, let's set the scene. We're talking about the 8th century BC in the northern kingdom of Israel. Our main character is a prophet named Hosea. Now, on the surface, things actually looked pretty good for Israel. They were wealthy, they were powerful, but underneath all that glitter, there was a deep spiritual sickness, a kind of corruption and idol worship that had poisoned the very soul of the nation. Now, before we go any further, there is one huge idea we have to get our heads around. It's this concept of covenant love. The Hebrew word is hesed. So what is that? Well, in our world, we often treat love like a feeling, right? It comes and it goes. This is something totally different. This is a love that's based on a promise, on a deep, binding commitment that doesn't quit, even when feelings fade. And this idea, it's the absolute foundation for this entire story. So what's the first thing God tells his prophet Hosea to do? Get ready for this because it is absolutely staggering. God says, go, marry a promiscuous woman. A woman named Gomer, who he knows is going to be unfaithful. And you have to ask why? Because their marriage was destined to become a living, breathing parable of God's own relationship with his people, Israel, who had become unfaithful to him. And just as God said, that's exactly what happens. Gomer is unfaithful to Hosea over and over again, just breaking his heart. And this becomes this brilliant, painful illustration of the book's central message. Just as Gomer betrayed her husband, the nation of Israel was betraying its sacred covenant with God, chasing after other gods, other idols. And if that wasn't clear enough, the message gets hammered home in the very names of Hosea and Gomer's children. I mean, just listen to this. First, their son, Jezreel, a name that pointed directly to a coming judgment. Then, their daughter, Lo-Ruhamah, which literally means not loved or no mercy. And finally, a third child, a son named Lo-Ami, not my people. Wow. Each name was like a hammer blow, marking just how broken this relationship had become. So now the story shifts. The perspective changes, and it starts to feel almost like we're in a courtroom. God, the betrayed husband, the heartbroken father, steps forward to lay out his agonizing case against the very people he loves so deeply. And here it is. This is the crucial point, the absolute core of the issue. God says the problem isn't that the people forgot the right sacrifices or the right rituals. No, their fatal flaw was a lack of knowledge. But this isn't about head knowledge. It's about heart knowledge. They had simply stopped knowing God. They'd lost that real, intimate relationship with him. And here are the specific charges laid out in this divine courtroom. There was no faithfulness, no love, and remember that deep covenant love we talked about? It was gone. There was no real acknowledgement of God in the land. Instead, you just had widespread violence, corruption, and a kind of worship that was completely hypocritical. The nation was just collapsing from the inside out. Now, you'd think the story ends there, right? A guilty verdict, case closed, but this is where the book of Hosea takes its most dramatic and, frankly, its most unexpected turn. The whole narrative pivots away from a judgment that was totally deserved to a grace that is absolutely undeserved. So what happened to Gomer? Well, after she leaves Hosea, her life completely spirals. She hits absolute rock bottom. She ends up degraded, with nothing, and is eventually sold on a slave auction block. It's the ultimate picture of total brokenness and bondage. And what does God command Hosea to do now? In one of the most moving lines in all of Scripture, he says, "Go show your love to your wife again." Not just feel love for her. Show it. Go to the woman who betrayed you, who is now literally owned by someone else, and love her. So Hosea goes to the slave market, and he does something incredible. He buys his own wife back. He pays the full price for a slave to redeem the woman who was already his. And this right here is such a core truth. Redemption is never free. It always costs something. This one incredible act brings the entire metaphor to its stunning climax. Hosea's painful, costly act of redeeming Gomer is a direct reflection of God's own heart for his people. It shows us that, even after everything, God's desire isn't just for justice, but for this breathtaking kind of restoration. Just listen to the anguish and the love in God's own words from the book. How can I give you up? How can I hand you over? You can just hear a heart that's torn, a holy God who must confront sin, but also a loving Father whose deepest, most passionate desire is simply to bring his children home. So, when you pull it all together, what are the big takeaways from this incredible story? Well, we see the true depth of covenant love, the gut-wrenching pain of spiritual adultery, the constant tension between judgment and mercy, the high cost of redemption, and of course, the theme that echoes through every single chapter: God's relentless, pursuing grace. And we'll end with this final thought, a line that just perfectly captures the entire message of the book. God's ultimate desire isn't for us to perform a bunch of empty religious rituals. It's for a real relationship, one that's defined by mercy, by loyalty, and by that deep covenant love. What matters most in the end isn't what we do, but who we know.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us.